What's up, world, and welcome back to the Global Frequency. I am your host, Nefarious. Freak Girl's not with us today because she is upstairs working on fulfillment. But we do have with us Edwin Decastro here to tell us all about his creator-owned comic book crowdfunding campaign, Lost Between Worlds, Hour 2, now live on Kickstarter. Edwin, what's up?
Hey, how are you, man? How's everybody?
We are doing well. Since it's just me, it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to negotiate between the comments and the adding up the campaign and viewing the stuff and things and reading the chat and asking you questions. But we'll take it slow and we'll do our very best. All right.
We'll do what we can.
Yeah, right. Mo says, I've been trying to give other people chances, but I'm just going for it next time. And I said, that's good, because what we do on this channel is if you're first, you put first in the chat before we go live, you get a chance to win a prize. And whoever gets 3 in a row, gets to win a prize. I think we're going to start doing it differently, awesome. Honestly, because 3 in a row is a little bit, oppressive. I think what we might want to do is at the end of the month, we'll record everyone's firsts and then we'll run a raffle or something like that. That way we're consistently giving away goodies.
That's fair, yeah.
Because we only have 3 shows a week, right? So we couldn't do it weekly because what if it's 2 people, right? That sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
For all right. We'll figure it out later though. Mobig says with no Freak Girl, the gatekeeping will be legendary. I know we're gonna do our best, bro. So before we get started, why don't we get to know a little bit more about you? What comics did you enjoy growing up?
When I was growing up, I like kind of, the usual stuff. Spider-Man, I like the Batman, I like Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles is my favorite to this day. Kind of your basic stuff, but as I got older, I definitely branched out into the more crazier stuff, the Watchmen and all that. But yeah, definitely with the basic.
What kind of comics do you like now?
Now, again, I'm still a huge fan of Ninja Turtles. I'm really big on the indie scene. If anything, that's probably what I read the most. There are just so many creative stories, unique art. That's where I'm at right now, just the indie scene mostly.
All right, so tell me then, what indie comics should we be reading?
For sure, you should be reading Brendan Albetsky's Marukyuri Destroys the Moon. Magic Powder by Jeff Schiller is also awesome. I gotta shout out my boys. We have issues with their new comic Deathless that they just got the comics in. So if anyone backed that, that's coming out. There's so many. I can recommend. What's this guy's comic called? It has a long title. Oh, Sassoon. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's by Lee on Twitter. That's another good one.
All right, man. That's great. I'm really excited that a good list of indie comics to recommend, because it's not every day we get creators on here who are actively consuming works in the medium. And it's very encouraging to me to be talking to creators who have books coming out, who know what's what when it comes to comic books that are on the scene. It's encouraging because it lets me know that they have a consistent diet of comics, so they're staying, up to date on what's coming out, what they should be looking for, varying up the stuff that they consume, helping them learn new technique maybe, or at least to incorporate new elements of visual storytelling. So it's always nice to know when somebody's actually consuming work in the medium.
Yeah, I love being in the community.
This book looks pretty dose. I think Mo's making a pun off of the name of the characters.
I like that one. Yeah.
So was there a particular comic book or comic book creator that helped shape your appreciation of the medium, and which ones inspired you to try telling one of your own?
So kind of a funny thing about that, when I was a kid, when I grew to like Batman, I started reading the comics as I got older, like teenage years. But I used to not like Batman. I was like, oh, he doesn't have any powers. His villains are like, almost the same. Some do have powers, some don't. But then as I got older, I realized like, well, his stories are way more logical. They're more like thought provoking, psychological aspects. So I feel like his stories connect with me a lot. That kind of inspired me. I like the more psychological aspects of the story, really get into the character details and character stories. That's my thing, really. I love that.
And why do you want to tell stories with pictures? Why not like make movies or something like that?
If I was rich, I would. But no, I just
Yeah.
like I like the medium. I've always loved reading. I did start off reading books before comics, which, most people would be like, well, that's probably the better option. But no, I love anime, manga, comics. I knew that I wanted to definitely not write the story. I wanted it to be visual. And yeah, since I don't have the money for a show or a movie, we went the comic route.
Let me say hello real quick to Creators Outlet, Will. I don't know if I hit you up before. And we've also got
Hey.
24 Eyes with us. 24 Eyes, you are going to be excited, my dude. Some of these books, they're looking really good. I can't wait to make an announcement about fulfillment coming up later today. Mo says, every damn time. And he's referring, of course, to your proclivity for the anime
Puns.
and manga arts. Mo is
Oh, okay.
Mo is the gatekeeper on this channel of the weeaboos, and it just seems that so many people these days partake of our Eastern comic book culture, and that's
It's gotten so
that's
big.
no bueno, no bueno. But do you have any formal education? Speaking of Mo Biggs, or professional experience storytelling through sequential art? That's his favorite question for me to ask people.
Not through sequential art, but I did go to school at one point for journalism, so I do have some writing background. I've been to
Okay,
school for a
cool.
few things.
So when did you get your start as a writer?
Literally since I was a kid, I was writing short stories, fan fictions. I always say, whenever I get interviewed and asked that question, that I used to be that cheesy kid who like I would write a fan fiction of Ninja Turtles, and I would write the turtles, colors and write their dialogue in that. So like if Raphael was speaking, it'd be red. Donatello would be purple. I did the same thing for like Mega Man, Pokemon. Like I just wrote a lot of fan fiction. I did Smash Brothers before Smash Brothers, but I know I'm not the only one who's done that. So yeah,
Yeah. Like characters, cartoon characters fighting each other and stuff. Yeah, like
exactly.
from
Yeah.
video games. That's
hmm
awesome, man. So, how did you learn to write specifically for comics? Because there's something different about writing fan fiction and literature and writing for comic books. Because writing for comics requires like the eye for the art, the eye for the
hmm
flow, the layouts on the page, that kind of stuff. Did you take a course? Did you study a book? Did you just read a shitload of comics and learn through osmosis?
A little bit of both. I did read a lot of comics. I was starting to get into the indie community even before creating my book. But then, besides reading comics, I didn't take a class per se, but I listened to a lot of like podcasts that are about making comics, about like Kickstarters, like Comics Launch, things like that. Um, Mo Biggs, yeah.
Most says
Um,
impressive. The journalism background gives him an excellent grasp of fiction, which is funny for two reasons. One, it's ironic because journalism is about reporting the news, which isn't
mhm.
fiction. Except today's news is stranger than fiction, and everything that's getting reported by the news media sounds like fiction. So, Mo's a very clever guy.
Yeah, I see that. But yeah, no, getting back to the question, besides just reading comics, as I was saying, just listening to a lot of podcasts about making comics, listening to what other people would say about the process, just kind of learning with my eyes, listening with my ears, things like that. And then I kind of blended the two where I have a weird writing style where when I write every issue, I kind of write it as a short story, then condense it to comic script form where I can see now, like I visualize it in my head. I can now kind of condense it to the most important parts and just plan out the panels that way. So kind of a blend of the two.
What else have you put out, and what else do you want to develop?
So that actually is out there for people to read. There's really nothing else besides this current
Well, you got
series.
two issues, right? You got two issues before this one, right?
I got two issues, and I also have the alternate versions of them. I don't know if you've ever even checked those out, but basically, I kind of it was a happy accident I fell into where I decided to just kind of create a second version and have it be like an alternate universe where it's the same story, but just things slightly happen differently. Like, for example, the first issue in the main one begins at night, the alternate one begins in the day. when you get to the bar scene, the bar location and the setting looks different, things like that. Just to kind of get into how I got like that happen. My original artist, his name was Mac. He was actually the one doing the alternate, which originally was going to be the main, but he had some health issues. I couldn't contact him for a month. I didn't know prior to the no contact that he had health issues. So I was thinking like, man, do I have to restart this whole like comic? Luckily, I was only 5 pages in. So I found a new artist. We started doing the new version. Mac came back to the picture, explained things. And then, yeah, that's where the happy accident was born. I was like, two versions of a comic. Have I ever seen that? It's some people say it's a dumb idea, like it's a lot of money being invested. But I thought it would be a way to stand out. And again, it's kind of a cool thing where if you want, you can see the two side by side and be like, so let me see what's different about this, you know?
Well, that's the cool thing about indie is like you don't give a fuck what
Yeah,
other people
exactly.
are doing. Oh, it's a waste of money investing in having two parallel storylines that are the same story told different ways. Shut up. It's what I want to
Yeah.
do. Like if I want to spend my money on that and I want to make it and there are people out there that are interested in reading it and buying it, then do what you want to do, man. Like you said, it is interesting and different. I've never really heard of someone doing the same story slightly differently with two artists. I've heard people do like their story from one point of view and then the same story from another point of view. So you're
Hmm.
seeing the same events transpire but from a different angle, and that's always been something cool that I liked. So
I like
maybe I'll
that
check
too,
out
yeah.
the alternate versions too. What are your long term plans for Lost Between Worlds?
Really, I mean, in general, I want to just make a career out of writing. Lost Between Worlds is a series I'm focusing on. I really want to make it big if possible. I just want to make a living. If anything else happens past that, it's just icing on the cake. As long as I can one day be like, writing is my job. I work on my series, and that's the ultimate goal for me. Everything else, pure cherry on top.
And in order to do that, you're going to need income, obviously, right? You're going to need this book to make money. So, what are your
Hmm.
plans to generate capital off of a book like this? Clearly, going to crowdfunding, it's so that you can make the product to have to sell. Are you trying to get into retail stores? Are you looking to go and sell through Amazon, Barnes and Nobles? What is your long term plan for monetization of this series of yours?
Eventually, retail stores would be cool. Right now, I have my personal website where I sell the physical books from, not counting Kickstarter, you know. I've been to cons selling the books there. I want to go to more. I would love to make that a thing, like to really hit up the cons more often. I've only been to two so far since starting my comic career basically last year. So I want to do that more often. I might do one in November. But yeah, besides that, I have a lot of things in the works. I have an animated version. Well, let me not say animated. It's more like a motion comic of the issue one.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of taking a slow burn to make because obviously there's only so much money a guy has, right? But I have
Right.
already recorded a lot of characters' voices. The voice actors have been paid. I need a few more to record. I need to find an editor to do it. But once that's done, I want to create a Patreon to post that on there. So if people want to pledge to that, they can watch it there. So I have a few ideas. We just got to make them happen.
So there are multiple avenues of monetization that you're pursuing off of like the IP. It's not just the comic. You're going to do, like you said, a motion comic. I've noticed also on all of your campaign pages, you have some sort of like playlist devoted to one of the characters because I guess music is a big inspiration for you, or at least to get into the mindset of the character, you have some songs that you like to listen to create the atmosphere. Would you ever consider doing some sort of like album or musical endeavor based off of the comic book?
Never really crossed my mind, but I would actually love to do that. I definitely am a musician. I play a few instruments. I mentioned earlier I've been to school for a few things. Music was one of them. And I just like the idea of making a playlist for each character where kind of puts you in their headset, like see what's, going on through their mind, what music they might be into. And also maybe you hint at some story stuff, if you pay attention, or maybe you catch later once you know the story. I'm one of those who love like little Easter eggs and layering things
Yeah.
into the story. So
Yep.
that's kind of where that kind of comes into it also. So yeah.
That's great. I think that actually would be really worthwhile pursuit. I mean, if you have the talents for it, you should definitely go do it. I know Ballad of the Celestials, the guys who made that, they have a band. So I was like, why don't you have a theme song? So that went and started working on a theme song. I know like
That's awesome.
creator by the name of Joe Catapano was putting together a cyberpunk synthwave album to accompany his comic book. Brian Shear did the same thing with Gunship Thunder Punch. So there are a lot of guys out there who have either explored, are exploring, or also Armin Nazim is one. He created some songs specifically for Rush NYC and some of his other comic series. So it is a thing. People like
It
to have
definitely is.
music and comics.
I have two friends who I mentioned them earlier. They have a comic called The Deathless coming out. They have a podcast called We Have Issues. The comic before Deathless was one they had called Play It Loud, I believe it was. The concept was basically a guy goes through a breakup and he's listening to like a mixtape that they made, like the couple made, but he goes back in time for every song. Like it kind of each song puts them into the moment of, like in their relationship. And I believe they plan to make a soundtrack of the songs and they wanted to make a whole vinyl record and everything. I think they're still in production for that. But yeah, it's that same concept essentially. That would be pretty cool to do.
That would be really cool. And like the fact that they've already kind of nailed that down and are pursuing that, creative people, they have to have multiple avenues and outlets for that creativity. And I really enjoy seeing that. So tell me about Lost Between Worlds. When did you start working on the series?
So officially, I started working on it during the pandemic. It was funny. I was literally doing Postmates, just to make money during that when everything was shut down except restaurants. And every time I'd be at a red light or just waiting for food, ideas would come to my mind from something like a bit of inspiration I had a long time ago watching Death Note. I don't know if
Can't
you've
help
seen
it.
Death Note,
I
the
can't help
anime,
it, man.
right?
It's kind of messed up that you had the idea for a comic book about Grim Reapers taking souls out of the mortal world during the pandemic. I have to say that's a little morbid, my man.
Well, I definitely
I wonder how
crafted
many
it.
of these people are just entering the afterlife. Wow, there are way too many dead people. The Reapers must be working overtime. No, I'm playing with you, but you know where I'm coming
It's
from,
funny
right?
though. Yeah, I didn't think of it like that, but that is pretty funny. That's hilarious. Yeah, no, literally, I was just watching Death Note one day. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a part where the guy finds the book that can kill people. He kind of asks the owner, which is a Shinigami, aka a Grim Reaper. He's like, "What's your purpose in life? Why do you guys have these books?" And the guy's lived so long that he doesn't even remember. To me, that kind of just made me go down a rabbit hole where I was like, well, if they can see a person's lifespan, maybe they're just originally supposed to kill them when their day comes and they're like Grim Reapers, right? So yeah, that kind of just led me down a rabbit hole of the ideas, inspirations. And as I said, when I was out there doing deliveries and I had nothing else to do, waiting for food at red lights, an idea would come in. I'm like, oh, let me write it down on my phone. And they just kept piling and piling until the whole thing just formed.
And then it was just off to the races from there. You're lucky you didn't
Yeah.
get pulled over by cops like typing on your phone ideas for your Shinigami comic book. I mean, could you imagine? That would have been awkward. Sir, what are you doing? I'm writing down ideas for a comic book about Grim Reapers and pulling souls out of
I'm
people.
building my
Just
future.
give me
I'm
a
building my
minute.
future.
There you go. Let me say hello to Dean James, Comics Mate, real quick. What is up, Dean? Thank you so much
Hey,
for
Thomas,
tuning
mate.
in, hanging out with us. So how did you put the team together for the book?
It was all through Reddit. As I mentioned earlier, Mac was the original artist. He ended up becoming the alternate artist. Elton, Diego, who rest in peace, he passed away a few months ago. They all really came from Reddit. And my new artist for the alternate issue, he came from Twitter. So now I've been kind of diving into the Twitter world ever since. But Reddit has some amazing artists. The Comics Collab subreddit, that's a great place to find people.
So I think I understand now because I was a little bit perplexed when I was looking at the cast of creators involved in the project. You mentioned earlier that you have an alternate version of the comic. You've got two different comics, same storyline, slightly different portrayals. And being that you have like Elton doing inks, covers, and character design with you, Gabriel doing colors, Reed doing letters and logos, and then Zombarai doing inks, colors, and cover design too. I was like, why is he doubling up on these things? Is it because they're doing inks for separate versions? Is that like how this is
Exactly.
playing out? Nice.
So
Now it
far
makes
lately,
sense.
yeah, so far lately, the alternate versions have all been done by one artist, like each time. Because the goal with that, I want to besides just make it, hopefully kind of make double profit with 2 books being sold, I also want to shout out just other artists. Like every time I want to feature another artist. So the first one was Mac. This one's going to be Samburai. I've actually already planned the 3rd issue with Brendan that hopefully he's going to do the art for that one. So, I just kind of want to keep having different artists come in all the time. So you see different stuff. And for me, it's kind of cool seeing my characters in another person's art style. So that was kind of the thought process behind that.
That makes perfect sense to me. Now, why don't you have an editor listed in the list of people working on the book?
So the first issue, I don't even remember if I did label them, but I did have someone kind of offhand edit it. They did a good job, don't get me wrong. They're an editor in real life. It's a person I know, like in real life, of a friend. The second issue, they weren't around. They didn't edit that one, and I should have edited that one. Not that there's anything big that I could see anyways. No one's told me of anything. But for this third one, I do want to bring them back, and I do want to kind of actually put them in the credits this time and see if we can move with them forward from here on out.
It's always reassuring to the reader to see an editor listed, to know that there's a second pair of eyes that's removed somewhat from the project that is giving quality control advice. Be it cleaning up the dialogue, polishing the grammar and syntax to make sure that nothing is incorrect, or even giving story notes or stuff like that. It depends upon like the level of editing that you want from an editor, but it's always nice to see that there's one on the book, because then the rest of us feel like you're taking it seriously, right? Like you're putting out a professional project. It's not just you writing it and someone else drawing it. It's you writing it, someone drawing it, and a third person making sure it's good to go out the door. And that makes us all go, oh, he's taking it seriously. Cool. So it's good to know that you've got one and you want to bring that person back in. So tell me about the setting. We were talking about Shinigami and, dead people and COVID. Tell me about the setting for the world that you're in.
So it takes place in the real world, present day. I chose Chicago only because, I'm from New York, but like I feel like
there are going to be
overused.
So many dead people in your book.
Yeah, that's kind of the point. I just felt like New York is overused. So I kind of just wanted with the urban setting, a big city, but let's just not use New York. So I used Chicago. I mean, obviously it's used in a lot of stories too, but just nowhere near as much. And then besides the real world, we get to explore what we call heaven and hell, but in my series, I call hell essentially Miklan and heaven Nirvana. So yeah, we've explored in the second issue Miklan. We haven't seen Nirvana yet, but maybe we'll see it. Who knows?
So who are the protagonists and the antagonists?
So I would say the protagonist is, of course, Gwen. That's the main character. In the third issue,
She's
you
the
meet
one
a
with
few others.
The deer horns, right?
Yeah, exactly, with the magenta deer horns. I actually have a little statuette of her here. I got as a little kind of reward,
nice,
personally.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Hey, I like that.
Yeah. I got to shout out my boy, Louis Schaefer. You can find him on Instagram. He made this for me. But yeah, I was like a little like, wow, I actually got the first book done. I need to get this just for me as a little reward.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, she's the main character. Antagonist, who knows? We have the guy with the dissociative identity disorder. His name is Dospe, or should I say the Banshee, because Gwen has a Banshee where she can check up on a guy's like file or whatever. We'll call it a file. It says his name is Verda, but she's talking to a guy who says his name is Dospe. So we find out he kind of has two people in one, two personas in one body, and he's essentially trying to like cheat death and find the loophole. Like, hey, you're looking for the other guy, and he's not here right now. You can't take my soul because I'm not the one who's scheduled to die. Yeah,
that's kind of awesome with people who just happen to have a spare personality lying around, can just kind of casually slip into the other persona and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. No, like he's not here. You can't.
Well, yeah, that's the funny part. So it's like, is he lying or is he telling the truth? And if he is telling the truth, kind of brings up that little morality. Like, well, if he thinks he's two people, does the one guy really deserve it? If he really thinks he's a whole other person, like, why does he deserve to die? So yeah, she's kind of figuring that out. So who knows what secrets this guy might be hiding? But yeah,
so
in the third issue,
in your universe, she as the Reaper is the only way, or I mean, a Grim Reaper would be like the only way someone can die, right? Like they have to be killed and taken by the Grim Reaper. Can they die and their soul like not go anywhere? Because otherwise, it's quite possible you have a lot of people with MPD or DID running around just immortal.
Well, I get you. The Grim Reaper has to take their soul by the end of their death, like however it happens. but it could happen in any way. For example, the band in the first issue, they die via the car
Yep.
accident, so she
Yep.
takes her souls at the end. With Dospe, I don't want to spoil anything, of course, but let's just say, for example, let's say someone's dying of old age. The old age would actually be the Grim Reaper dropping like the drop that she was trying to do to Dospe to kill them like that. So us humans in this world would not be able to see them. That's why we assume, oh, they die of old age, whatever. But it's actually the drop in this world. Now, Dospe's not an old guy, so he's not dying because of that. But, just to drop a little something.
You mentioned the drop. I read the first issue. I don't think anyone else has. So, do you want to tell them a little bit about how it works? Like, she's got the clock, which kind of implies when the next death is going to be near her because fate is like prescribed and unavoidable. Do you want to like explain the metaphysics behind
Yeah, of course.
life and death? That'd be cool.
So basically, I kind of wanted it to be like a job essentially for Grim Reapers, right? I have like that little funny aspect if you really think about it. So her job is essentially to collect souls, take them to the afterlife to be judged, to go to heaven or hell, you know? So the
Hilarious.
Banshee that she uses, exactly, that's for the drop from the alternate issue too. The Banshee she uses is like a compass sort of where she can see where her target is, but it also can look up like the person's name, things like that. So it's kind of like what were they called back in the day? A Palm Pilot, right? A Palm
Yeah,
Pilot.
oh my god, back in the day, my dude.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, I'm like, yo, that was like last week for me.
That's funny. Well, yeah, she just looks up files. So it's like, oh, this is my next target. Oh, he's over here. All right, let's go. And then, yeah, she uses the Banshee to put the drop. It's kind of something I looked up in a mythology where it's called the gall. They would drop a bit of gall through a sword. It falls kind of like how I did with her dagger into the person's mouth, and that's what would kill them and take their soul. So I kind of just lifted that and used it as like that's what Grim Reapers use. They use this dagger, put it into their mouth, so on and so forth.
Oh, that works. So I have to ask, what kind of research did you do to prepare yourself for the series? I mean, it seems like there are a number of cultural influences here. I noticed that you're using like Ku Sith as the name of the dog, and you're using
Mm-hmm.
Charon, and those are like traditionally Greco-Roman mythological figures. Kusith, of course, comes from the Gaelic tradition, and then you've got like Sienna Muerte, who is the daughter of Mictlan and Micteca, who on the
Mm-hmm.
previous campaign we saw look very much Mexican Day of the Dead inspired. So there are a lot of different cultural
Aztec
influences
mythology,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Aztec mythology. So you laid
Mm-hmm.
out for me, like, how did you compile all of the different cultural influences into the world that you're presenting?
I just did my research. When I knew I wanted to work with like the whole story about death and use Grim Reapers, I kind of had to determine who was going to be my main character at first. And so I started looking up different gods of death, different mythologies, just reading info. I wanted to use someone that's not so obvious. Like, for example, a lot of people know Baron Samedi. I'm not going to say I'm
Yep.
not going to use him, but I just didn't want to use someone that's like, oh, that guy's using everything. And plus, me, I'm Hispanic. When you talk about death, you use feminine pronouns. So I figured like it should be a female.
Could have used
So
Oshun, right?
yeah, of course I
I
could
mean, yeah.
have. Maybe they'll appear. Who knows? I'm just saying.
Maybe my man's gonna start, pulling some voodoo deities in here. Like, never know,
Maybe.
right?
Yeah, I
It's
so
funny.
again. Uh huh.
My friend Mike, Mike Odin, he does something similar. He's really like heavy on the Greek and Roman mythology, and he did the series called Elysian Fields, which is
I've heard of
all
it.
about
Yeah,
like battles in hell, where he's got like the Greek pantheon, which is like
it's the
Greek
one that's
heroes
like
like
JoJo's,
Achilles.
right?
That's SPQRs.
Oh,
This
okay. No,
is
never mind.
kind of
Yeah. Uh
like
huh.
it's inspired almost like by Fate. Do you remember the Fate series? Like
Yeah.
Fate Zero, Fate. Yeah. So it's almost like a group of heroic spirits based on a mythological pantheon and their opposing pantheon. So like in one episode, he's got the Egyptian pantheon with like Anubis versus Hades and the Greek pantheon, and they fight for control
That's
of
awesome.
hell. And it's
Yeah.
all of these different cultures kind of like warring over the underworld. But this reminded me a tiny little bit of that when I started seeing these different cultural influences on the world. But you don't have like a big battle royale going on down in hell. You've got something much more significant threatening the world of the living. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it kind of just stems from what I was saying when I was looking up the history on the main character. I wanted a kind of feminine Grim Reaper. I came across Gwyn ap Nudd, which is not spelled exactly like my main character. So that reminded me. That's funny.
Yo, Mo said B Rose considers himself an ace palm pilot. Well done, Mo. Well done.
That's
You don't know. I
hilarious.
don't know if you know B Rose, but we give him a lot of shit around here. He used to be a streamer, doing interviews and stuff like that. He used to have a show called The Shit Show, and I kind of miss it. It was like just a
A
place
shit
where we
show?
would go and watch him be an idiot. And try and talk to people, kind of like what we're doing now, except his was
Mm-hmm.
really disorganized and poorly put together.
And he
And it
lived
was
up to
fun to
the
make fun
name?
of him. Yeah. Oh yeah,
That's
he
funny.
absolutely did. Yeah. B
Well,
Rose, we
yeah,
missed
so
you. Come back, bro.
the glorious return will come one day.
Yeah,
Um,
let's hope.
So as I was just doing the research, as I said, I just kept coming across more like Grim Reapers and, or rather, Gods of Death and what like their history is. I was kind of like, these are all pretty cool. Like they could just be characters all on their own. So I started incorporating them all and just tweaking their names a little. Like for example, there's a God of Death, San La Muerte and Santa Muerte. Those are the ones that I
Hmm.
made Sienna and Sancho, just because I was like, well, those names are kind of too long. I don't want to use that. So I tweaked it a little. And yeah, that's where I'm getting all my characters from, basically just tweaking them, giving them a bit of my own spin, modernizing it.
So, what's the crisis on Earth that they're trying to deal with? Because in the very first issue, you allude to potential Armageddon. That's something is affecting death and the afterlife, and that's spilling over into the world of living. You want to give us like a little peek into the plot? I know there are like two other issues out, and you're on to the third one. But for people who may not have read it and want to know a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about where the action's coming from, sell them a bit.
Of course. So the first issue is kind of a little low key, like world building, just figuring out what her deal is, how the Grim Reapers work. You feel you see a little bit of the afterlife and goes on there. But towards the end, as you mentioned, there is a little bit of a tease of like an Armageddon apocalypse. The second issue kind of starts off with a bang, where when she comes back, she finds the bartender dead that she was, previously at drinking. There's zombies now, and she's like, "What the hell? This has something to do with it, of course." And she realizes that the souls she's been claiming, now she can't claim them. So we got the undead walking around. Her ability of taking souls doesn't work anymore. And now in the third issue, we even have monsters. So clearly something's up. And yeah, we get
Okay,
more answers as we go.
tell me what's up with this dude over here. This like big old monster tyrannid hive tyrant looking thing.
Yeah, so when you read this issue, he kind of just comes out of nowhere. They deal with him, but the next issue, the fourth one, will kind of explain where he came from. And yeah, can't really say more than that, be spoilery. But yeah,
Gotcha,
it's just a
gotcha.
little guy, just ramping things up, and then yeah, you'll get your
It's
answers.
like a 9 foot tall demon with tentacles and like he's just a little guy. Don't worry about it. So this isn't your first rodeo. You've run two other crowdfunding campaigns for Lost Hours before. What are you doing differently this time?
So this time, I will say I'm asking for the most I've asked. It's a slightly nerve-wracking, but I think we got this. In terms of rewards, we have the usual suspects. I've been doing cameo tiers for the last ones. They've been pretty popular. But this time I'm tweaking it where if you've never had a cameo, you can still become a zombie if you want. But if you have like a business or a comic or like a podcast you want to shout out, we'll feature it in the background of an upcoming issue. Another idea I came up with just to kind of slightly be different. In old comics, how you would send a letter to the editor and they would post whatever they picked in the front or the back, wherever it is, in like an editor section. I want to do one where you
Mm-hmm.
can either write to me or you can write to Gwen and she'll answer you in character. So there's a tier to get that like guaranteed in the book. We have comic book store tiers, which if you have a comic book store, you can buy a bunch of copies just to have, if you want. And what else do we have? We have all the options for all the alternate art style books. We have variant covers, the regular books. But the really big
So
difference would be the cameo and the writing in.
the main book it looks like the physical variant tier and the regular physical tier are both $10. Is this the same size as the earlier books, 32 pages?
No, well, actually, this one's going to be, they're all different sizes. The first issue was 40, I believe. The second one was 24, I think. This third issue is going to be 29. So they're kind of all over the
Okay.
place.
It's like no set page count or anything. No, who needs that?
I just write until I feel it's good. Once it's good, that's what we're going to go with.
You find your stopping point and you're like, this is good here. We'll call this a chapter. You know,
Yeah, like once I feel like this is the logical like end of the story. Plus another thing I have, it's kind of like a gimmick with my comic is every issue is an hour of the story, so there's going to be 25 in total. So I do want whatever is in the issue to kind of realistically be like, oh yeah, that could happen in an hour. So that kind of plays into it too. And another unique thing I'm doing with my campaign, every backer gets entered into a raffle, so you could possibly win a whole year of Global Comics for free. And there's going to be 10 winners, so there you go. That's another thing we're doing.
Chris is up to some mad stuff right now. He's getting it all together, man.
Dude, Chris is
it's
awesome,
really
man.
awesome. Yeah, it's really
Global
awesome
Comics
to
is
see what he's up
awesome.
to.
Chris is a genius, and honestly, if you talk to him, he's like a really cool guy. You never know. Like I just kind of asked him if that would be a cool thing to do. He was like, "Yeah, bro, go for it." And yeah,
Yeah, we hung out at New York Comic Con for a little bit. That was it was eye opening to see what he was doing there on the exhibitors floor.
that's
We've got
awesome.
80s made consumer with us. We also have my boy Brian. What is it? What did they call him? Yugoslavian Brian, because it's Brian with a Y. Aerith from Aerith Saga here with us. So we were saying this goal this time is $5,000, which is
Yeah.
twice as much as the goal for the first book, and 2,000 more than the goal for the second. Why so
Mm-hmm.
much this time?
Because we need to do some reprints of the old books, especially if people want them. But besides that, of course, got to pay the team. I feel like as more books come out, if you really want to reprint them all to have catch-up tiers, you can't really ask for low amounts because the cost of printing just doesn't match what you're asking. So as more books come out, that price just kind of has to go higher. And then I have plans to do some other little bonuses. Like I did stickers last time. I want to do keychains or like a little figurine possibly, but most likely keychains. I think that's what I put on there. So just to fund that as well.
Um, I had another question. This campaign for Lost Between Worlds is called Hour 2.
hmm
Why is it Hour 2 instead of like issue 3?
I just wanted to label, like, title my issues. I know not all comics do that, or at least maybe put it in the front. Some might have, like, when you open the first page, the title of it, whatever. But I just wanted it because I said a gimmick. My series has, like, a 24-hour gimmick. I wanted you to know exactly what hour we're on every issue. Issue 1 is hour 0 because that technically doesn't fit in the 24-hour timeline. So that's why issue 2 starts at hour 1. This one's hour 2, so on and so forth.
B-Rose doing custom baldos. So there are going to be 22 more issues after this. Do you have a
Yes.
self-contained narrative that'll fit into 22? Is that why you're like doing random sized issues because you know just how much you want to tell within this 1 hour? Like this is 29, this was 40 pages. Are you gonna ever have like one comic that's like, I don't know, 90 pages because you just have that much to say about this one
No,
hour?
I
No.
don't think
No,
so, no.
you've distilled them into more manageable bites no matter what. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
I
good.
pretty much have like bullet pointed all the major plot points. It's just a matter of now filling in the between.
So looking at the campaign page, right, and looking at the tiers that you have, what is your goal to get yourself to that 5K? Like, do you have a plan to get more eyes on the books? You've got just under a week in, right? You have 30 days, I think.
hmm
You had on this campaign. So you're what? You're
Yep.
24 days in. You're almost 30% of the way there. What are your plans to get more eyes on the book to improve the visibility and get the rest of the way? Because you got 3 weeks left.
Literally just post everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit. I have a TikTok that I need to get on more often. This is a good enough reason, so let's get on the TikTok, do more interviews. I have like 2 lined up pretty soon as well. So just I gotta get everywhere, put myself out there. Like, gotta have no shame on that marketing.
It's true, and it's spooky season, right? So
Yep.
you've got a book about Grim Reapers and spooky stuff, right? That incorporates,
Exactly.
like you were saying, Aztec mythology. So you could do some costume stuff. You could do some like jump scares. I'm sure you could find some weird like trendy TikTok material. I remember Freak Girl showed me once upon a time this girl that does like lip syncing to conversations or songs or whatever, and she does her face all up in like
Yeah.
this very skeletal look. It's just really good makeup. Doing something like that would probably get a lot of traction this time of year to divert eyes to the campaign. You got 24 days. It's not a infinite amount of time, but it's also not a teeny amount of time. You could
No,
probably
yeah.
pull something off so that by the time the final week of the campaign is sneaking up, people are really hitting you're hitting critical mass with the amount of attention that you're bringing to the book. So that's
You just
that's good.
you just inspired an idea too, because like I mentioned earlier, I've done two cons. Yeah, my fiance helped me out with those two cons by cosplaying as Gwen. Those pictures are floating
See,
somewhere on my Twitter. But yeah, I can get her to do it again and maybe do something on
that's what
Twitter
I'm
with
talking
that.
about. And
Yeah.
do some of the TikTok stuff. I mean, I'm 40 something, right? So like the TikTok stuff is still kind of lost on me. I can't do the water bottle thing that was like popular on YouTube
I
11
remember
years
that, yeah.
ago. I missed that phase, right? So like I missed the
Planking.
boat. Right? Like there were the Tide Pods. Then what's the chicken and Nyquil
The
challenge?
NyQuil, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like what is going on with our society, bro? We got Eric the Guapo with us. Thanks for tuning in, Eric. Good to see
Yo.
you. Yeah. So, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned so far about crowdfunding? All the times that you've crowdfunded before.
Never underestimated, definitely. Because again, I'm not like overtly worried, but the second one kind of funded not by now. And again, I was obviously asking for way less, but like I think within a week and a half, the second one was funded. This one, obviously, I'm asking for way more. But if I have to be like honest, I will admit I thought I'd have a little more by now. But again, I'm confident we'll make it. I just got to hit the marketing harder, things like that. I did
Why do
start a
you
new
think we
job.
don't? Why do you
We
think
don't
we
what?
don't have? Why do you think you don't have that much?
That's what I was gonna say. I just started a new job. I used to work at a Pizza Hut where, like, on dead time, I could just be on Twitter all day, and that's what I would do. But now with this new job, I have to like kind of learn. Let's focus more on the job. So this kind of first week, I haven't marketed as much as I should have, and I also did launch on a Sunday, which most people advise against. But I just kind of had to because again, Monday was my first day. I wanted to get the window of timing in good. So I think the second week I just got to hit it more harder. I'm off on the weekend now, so to Saturday and Sunday you're gonna see a lot of me on Twitter everywhere.
So I noticed this. If you like the series like Death Note, Bleach, Castlevania, Mr. Robot, or movies like Split and Fight Club, I think you'll really dig this series. That is an eclectic assortment. I can kind of see the motif with Death Note and Bleach being the like spirit beyond the mortal coil, like the Shinigami, or I don't know what they're called in Bleach, but I know that like
Hmm.
they're dead and they have like
They're called the same
spirits,
thing.
sort whatever, and they kill
Yeah.
hollows, which are I don't know. And in Castlevania, it's him versus like the undead, right? And there are monsters and stuff. So I can
Uh-huh.
kind of feel that. How does Mr. Robot fit in?
Have you seen it?
No, explain it to me.
Well, I mean, mild spoilers for the first season. It's kind of obvious if you watch it. One of the characters who is called Mr. Robot, he has split personality, dissociative identity disorder, essentially. And
Okay,
so,
so that's where Split and Fight Club, those
exactly,
elements come
yeah.
into. All
Hmm.
right, cool.
Yeah,
I
I
was
just
gonna say
love those
because
kinds of stories. I love me. I mean, I feel most writers obviously do this, but you like a certain genre, a certain kind of trope in a story, you want to incorporate that or mix it in with something else you love. That's essentially what I did. I love that dark fantasy horror stuff, mixed it in with the like psychological aspect I like of bipolar, whatever it is, and yeah, there we go.
Eric says my biggest lesson in crowdfunding is that certain creators do not like dick noses. Is that what happened? Is that what got you blocked, bro? Bro, that's a tragedy. That shit was hilarious.
Wow.
Talk about no sense of humor. Mo said, Neff, stop waxing poetic on Death Note and Bleach. I apologize, Mo, it won't happen again. The first episode of Mr. Robot was great, but it was downhill from there. I can't say I've seen it. I've had friends talk to me about it. My eyes glaze over when they start talking about it, and I just zone out.
It is a show where when you talk about it, it kind of does sound like not interesting. But at least me, when I watched it, I was like, this is pretty awesome.
That's the friend of mine who was recommending it also really likes Rick and Morty. And I hadn't watched any Rick and Morty, so he was always telling me about how funny Rick and Morty was.
I haven't either, honestly.
And it got to the point where I was like, okay, I probably will have to check this out at some point, but none of it made sense to me because explaining Rick and Morty out of context isn't the same as watching the show. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So then he decided, like, you know, he told me enough about Rick and Morty the multiple times that we'd hung out, and now he was going to explain Mr. Robot. So it's just kind of like the same. I remember what it was like listening to you talk about Rick and Morty, so I'm just kind of going to, you know, zone out. But I did hear it was worth a look. Mo says I should check out the first episode at least.
Yeah, at least, right? I will say it's, again, one of those shows where, like, it's very... There's a lot to it, so you can't really explain it without spoiling the hell out of it. And even if you try to explain it on a basic level, because it deals with hacking and stuff, at least at first, you know, it's kind of a running theme, but the first season is really hacky and tech involved. So when you try to explain that, it's kind of like, huh? But it's one of those things you just got to watch. And if you like that kind of stuff, you'll get into it.
So what advice do you wish people had given you when you started creating comics and crowdfunding them?
How expensive it would be and how nerve-wracking it is.
That's fair. That is fair.
Doug on Twitter, he made a tweet recently. I don't know if you saw. Well, someone asked, like, let's get real. How expensive is it to make a comic? And he broke down his pretty much like, all right, I paid this for inks, this for colors, this for lettering, this for printing, blah, blah, blah. It equaled basically around $6,000. And I was like, dude, his rates of everything he just said is almost exactly the same as mine. And yeah, it's really expensive. Like, the money I've invested in these books, I could have done so much with that money. And it's kind of real. It makes me realize, like, man, I wasted my money on so much things before this comic.
Yeah, you do realize when you're into the process of making comics, it does take money, but then it puts everything else you were spending money on in perspective, right? Because you're paying for the creation of something that's important to you, and like each page, you know, is a certain amount. And then you're like, well, I could either get a page of my comic done, or I could go buy that new whatever the crap
PS5 or whatever, yeah.
Well, I mean, hopefully a page isn't as expensive as a PS5. God damn.
Well, I usually do like 4 or 5 at a time, so that equals basically a PS5.
Yeah, we do that a lot too. Now we do like little chunks of 5 with the artists just to stay on target, but also not to overcommit to paying too much all at once. I've had some bad experiences with people like paying them either half up front and then never like getting it done on time, or people who, you know, you do pay and then once they turn it in and it needs revision, they don't want to go and revise it because they've already been paid. So it gets you know, the cost of everything really does become eye-opening when you start taking stock of everything that you're spending money on these books. Most said it got goofy. What if Dexter was a hacker? And then later, what if everything got goofy?
I don't even understand that goofy part. I think
I haven't watched the show.
The only thing I could think of is maybe like some of the filmography makes it like for example, I don't know how far Mo got, but there's like an episode in season 2 where legit like the first 15 minutes puts the main character in like an Alf setting. Like Alf is literally on the show. And it's funny, yeah, but it kind of plays into the theme of the episode. So I don't know. I kind of view things from like
that could be goofy.
Yeah, it can be. I view things from a really filmographer's perspective. So I can see why that might be goofy, but me, I can see like why they did it. Like it kind of fit with the theme of the episode. So, you know.
So if you could offer any valuable advice to other newbie creators that are not you, advice that is different than advice you wish you got from someone else when you started, what would it be? What if, like, you know, pass on a lesson? What words of wisdom do you have for others?
I would say, I mean, the basic thing everyone always says is definitely you just put yourself out there. Like, no one's going to write your story for you. You just have to write it. But you also have to do your homework, like research what it is you're going to write about, know the topic, don't go into it blindly, plan out your outline, and just do your research on all aspects of Kickstarter, printing costs, know what you're getting into. I think that's the biggest thing.
It's a good piece of advice for everybody because a lot of people don't do that necessary research before they write. They don't do the necessary research before they plan the crowdfunding campaign. They just kind of walk into it thinking, "Oh, I everyone else does this, so can I." They don't do the research getting into the whole like, how am I going to provide this physical book for people? So definitely taking some time to learn what you don't learn. It's good advice. Cost is a
That
factor,
just
but I feel you should make the book because you want to read it. Then you can sell your book for the rest of your life. That is
Yeah, that's for
a
sure.
good. Hey, we're getting a Diaz raid. Right on. Hey, Michael Bancroft
Ooh.
is with us. Oh, that's awesome. Phil and Brennan must have just ended. I saw that they were on earlier. They were going live. So yeah, cost. He's 80s Made says cost is a factor, but make the book you want to make, and then you can sell it for the rest of your life. That's a good point.
Definitely.
The thing is, it can be prohibitive to make the book you want to make right off the get. You know what I mean? Like off the rip, you're not going to be able to necessarily afford $30,000 worth of comic book pages in a giant graphic novel format. You might need to take it like slower, step by step, right? Although
Yeah.
polishing your stuff is really good, a really good and important part of the process too. So
Yeah, a lot of
maybe
people
put
say
something
start
small.
simple, like a
Yeah.
5-page comic or whatever. Also, I mean, what you can afford too, and if you're patient, because even if you can only afford 1, 2 pages at a time, and you want to make an 100-page book, if you're patient enough to wait for it, then you can go that route.
That's true. Another thing that I've seen done is that people who are making the book, putting, if they're not planning to sell a digital version, putting up the digital pages either behind a Patreon or for view on a site like Tapas or Webtoon or whatever to maintain interest in the book and to
Hmm.
court a reader base, to develop an audience for this while it's in the process of being made, and then crowdfunding the physical book so that you have that, like we're saying, 80s Made, a book to sell forever.
That's what I'm basically doing. A little not so secret. The first 2 issues are on Global Comics for free if you want to check them out. But yeah, you
Nice.
you can get the physical books through Kickstarter on my website. But yeah, if you just want to see the story, see if it's for you, and then consider backing, maybe find it on Global Comics.
It is officially a Zaid raid. That's a thing. We need to get like one of those little gifts that everybody likes to play. Like when you get a super chat or something.
Yeah,
We need a little. You need to tell us what the Zaid raid gif is going to be so that we can play it when it happens. Phil, that would be awesome. We got Not My Monkeys, Not My Circus with us. We got Jeremy Burtz as well. What's up, Jay Burtz? We got the Pasta Master himself, Past Master Dan. He says, "Sorry, Neff. I thought I was sub. My apologies. That's okay. It's never too late to sub to the channel. We're not going anywhere.
problem solved.
Thank you so much for sending everybody our way, Mr. Diaz. We appreciate it. But we are getting to that point in the interview where you're going to get the last words before we prepare to take on off and go and get back to fulfillment upstairs. So, do you have
I
any
know how
words
that
for the
goes.
audience that is now joining us from the Diaz chat?
Well, as I mentioned, I have a series called Lost Between Worlds. The first 2 issues you can read for free digitally on Global Comics. After you read them, if they're right up your alley, you can check out the Kickstarter. We are live for another 24 days, I believe it is, and we're asking for 5K. We're like 30% there. You can find me on Twitter at Lost Between War One, Instagram Lost_Between_Worlds, and Facebook Lost Between Worlds book series. Reach out to me, message me. I'm around. If you need advice, whatever it is, I'm there.
Nice. We do have all of that personal information, like your social media, in the description of the video. I'll make sure that Freak Girl has that updated for you so that people who
Perfect.
check this out, have it attached. I am back in this book because I think it looks good. It's a $10 physical tier. And I like that it's low like that. I think it's 30 pages. You said it was 29, so that's a pretty good
29, yeah.
rate,
Hmm.
like for page to price ratio. Also, there are these previous books, and catching up on them is a possibility. He has the catch-up tier on the campaign, and you can always just read the digitals that, from the first two issues on Global Comics before you make up your mind whether or not you want to back the series. So I like the fact that creators, like yourself, who have an ongoing series can do that and be like, hey, the work speaks for itself. If you want the physical, cool, man, it's right here for you. But with that, Dean says, hail everyone who showed up when I wasn't looking. With that, though, it is going to be time for us to get on out of here. I appreciate everyone who jumped in and showed up. We're really grateful for you coming and hanging out with us. Gives us a reason to do the show, other than just hanging out with cool creators like Edwin here. If you enjoyed the content, please leave a like. That helps us out. And sub if you aren't already. And yeah, if you want to know when we go live next, click the bell for notifications and tune into the frequency. Let me see if I can get this outro.